Hi, Y10. We're going to start a ratio today. So ratio is all about comparing and sharing. So that's your title for today. And let's start off with the comparing part then. So you should be familiar with ratio notation, and it's always comparing one thing to another, and you need to say what those things are. So let's say we're comparing Brighton fans to Palace fans, and let's say for every 4 Brighton fans, there's 1 Palace fan. Now that doesn't mean that there's only 5 fans. It could be that there's 50 fans, for example. Because, well, how does that work? Notice if I've times this by 10, then I can times each of these things by 10. So if there's 40 Brighton fans, how many Palace fans do they have to be? Well, for every 4 Brighton fans, there's 1 Palace. So 40 Brighton, there'll be 10 Palace fans. So it doesn't, if just because it's given in a ratio of 4 to 1 initially, doesn't mean there's only 5 fans in total. It could be any amount that is divisible by 5. Now, why does it have to be divisible by 5? Because if it's not, then I'll start getting decimals in my ratios, which I don't want because I'm talking about people here. So another way to look at it is if I then times this by 10, I'd have 400 to 100. I can see there's 500 fans. Again, that's divisible by 5. There's another relationship going on here as well. So if you're given one of them, you can see that if I go from left to right and times in by 4. So say I had 7 here. What would the gap be in here? Try and fill it in your book. So get everything down so far, and just make notes about what I've said. Well, now I need to times it by 4. So here, that would be 28. Now, what about going back the other way? Let's say I had 60 here. Well, how do I get from here to here? Divide by 4. So if I divide by 4, then there's 16 Brighton, then there's 15 Palace. So they're always in that ratio. Some other ways that you could see a ratio is in a table. If you have Brighton and Palace, then you could have 4, 1, 8, 2, 12, 3. Notice what's going on here. We're adding 1 each time, adding 4 each time. So it's just your 4 times table and your 1 times table added together, which in total, so if I added those up as well, then I'd get my 5 times table. So that's the total, and this is the ratio. You could see it as a graph. So if we had Brighton, let's have Palace here actually, and Brighton here. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, there's 4, 8, 12, and it will go up. If there's 0, then there's 0, 8, 2, so on. It'll be a straight line like that. And another way, which we've seen in solving equations before, is you can see a bar model. So all I need to do is refer to this ratio here. So 4 to 1. So I'm going to draw 4 boxes, and then my Brighton fans, and then 1 box for my Palace fan, and then all these boxes are worth the same amount. So if I say that each box is worth 5, let's say that's worth 5, that's worth 5, that's worth 5, that's worth 5. Well, how many are in my well, it's still going to be in the ratio 4 to 1, but now there's 5, 10, 15, 20 Brighton, 20 Brighton to 5 Palace. And notice that's still in the ratio of 4 to 1. So there's just some different representations. Next thing we're going to just look at is simplifying. Don't know what that circle is. Next thing we're going to look at is simplifying. It's really, really similar to simplifying fractions. So when you have a fraction of, say, 2 over 20, you could simplify that because they're both divisible by 2. So that would be 1 over 10. It's exactly the same in a ratio if you have 2 to 20. So that's what that that colon means is 2. So 2 to 20, for every 2 of something there's 20 something else. In its simplest form, that would be 1 to 10, because we can divide both sides by 2, and we can't divide by anything more and get integers still. So look, if I divide by 2 again, then 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, and I don't want integers, I don't want decimals as my in my ratio in its simplest form. So I'll just have a go at another one just to show you this. Let's go for 80 to 20. So I'll do it and then I'll come up with one for you to have a go at. 80 to 20, well, I can see immediately they're in 0, so I'm going to divide by 10 straight away. And that'll get me 8 to 2. Well, I can see they're both divisible by 2 still because they're both even. So that would get me 4 to 1. And now it's in that ratio that I saw before with Brighton to Palace. It didn't have to be, I just made it up like that. Of 4 to 1. And now that's in its simplest form because it's I can't simplify that any further. Can't divide by it. They haven't got a common factor now. So the questions I'd like you to have a go at are simplify. So all of them saying simplify. That's question 1. Okay, can you simplify all of those? So have a go at them. Right, and then so make sure you pause the video and have a go at them. Now get your red pen out. So again, I can see they're both divisible by 2. So I can divide them both by 2, and that's in its simplest form now. I can't divide those by anything more. The only common factor they have now is 1, and if I divide by 1, I just get the same thing. These both have a common factor of 7. So that would be 1 to 5. 8 to 24. These have a common factor of 8. And again, you might not have jumped to 8 straight away. You might have thought, oh, they're both even, so I can divide both by 2. So I can show you it in 2 stages, and you should still get to the same thing. Then you get 4 to 12. And then I can see, oh, they're even again. 2 to 6. Oh, they're even again, so I can divide by 2 again, and my ratio is 1 to 3. So for every 1 of something, there's 3 of something else. Now, sometimes, as with question 2 and 4, there might not be even numbers. When they are even, it's quite nice to just be divided by 2 all the time. But notice these aren't even, but they do have a common factor. And if you're stuck on common factors, then write out all the factors of the number and see what factors they share. So 1 to 15. Oh no, 3 and 5. And then that's all the factors. And we can see that 3 is the highest common factor. So we're going to divide by that. So divide by 3 is 2, divide by 3 is 5. So that's in the ratio 2 to 5. The other thing I wanted to mention is it matters what order you put them in. So notice that I can't say Brighton to Palace is 1 to 4 because that would be the wrong ratio. I've got to get the order right. So if a question asks for Palace to Brighton, so if a question asks what's the ratio of Palace to Brighton, then you just switch it round and it'd be 1 to 4. And I like to just put a little, if they haven't given it to you, I'd like to just put like an abbreviation of it or just a shortening of it so you can see what it is, or B to P, be 4 to 1, so you can just switch them around. Right, next thing I'd like to have a look at is sharing in a ratio. We're going to use a bar model for this, like we did with solving equations. I know it's something we've seen before. So I'm going to do the one on the left, then I'll give you a chance to have a go at it, at the one on the right, and then that'll be us for the day. I think I'll set a maths watch on this on Thursday or Friday. So I'll do the one on the left, then I'll talk through it. Okay, so there's quite a bit going on there, so I'll explain what I did at each stage. First thing I did was drew out a box of 3 and a box of 1. So the box of, let's do that in a different colour, the box of 3 comes from there, and the box of 1 is because there's a ratio of 1 there, so 3 to 1. I know it's got to be in that ratio. Now, it says that there's 24 grams of something, so I need to split 24 by these 4 boxes, because there's 4 in total, which is why I divided by 4, because it's how many boxes there are in total. So that, I'll just add, don't know why it's being highlighter, how many boxes there are. So that is 3 plus 1, because there's 3 boxes here and 1 box here. So 24 came from the total that I'm sharing. And then I got 6, and that told me that each box must be worth 6. So then I put in a 6 into each box, and I know then I can just add them up, and that tells me how many each, let's say it's each, it's probably to do with ingredients, this question, so let's say it's 18 lots of flour to sugar, let's say. So 18 grams of flour to 6 grams of sugar. So I got that 18 by doing 6, add 6, add 6, or 6 times 3. Right, have a go at the one on the right, and then I'll go for it. So make sure you have a go at it, see if you can like, recreate my working on the left hand side, and then yeah, just have a go at it. Okay, I'll go through it now. So there's 5 boxes to 1 box. So I'm going to draw out my 5 boxes and my 1 box, and they are all worth the same amount. So I'm trying to make them like similar sizes to show that. So in total, there's 6 boxes. So that comes from the 5 add the 1, because there's 6 boxes. And I need to share out 24. So I'm going to do 24 over 6 this time, which is 4. That tells me that each box is worth 4. So I can fill in 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and 4. So how many 4s are there now? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to work out that, I can do 4 times 5, which is 20. And then there's 1 lot of 4 there, so it's 4. So I've shared out my ratio is 20 to 4. Let's say it's flour to sugar again. Now I've got 20 grams of flour to 4 grams of sugar. Another way to just check you've done it right is check that your numbers add up to 24 still. So 20 add 4 is 24, 18 add 6 is 24. That tells me I've done something right. I'll just do an example where it's a little bit harder, and I'll do it without the boxes. So let's say I buy a lottery ticket, but I buy it with another person. So every week, let's say we buy a lottery ticket, but when it's, let's say it's £1 or 100p, and I always put in, let's say I always put in 61p, and the other person always puts in 39p. So we buy the lottery ticket, and that's the amount we put in. And let's say we win the lottery one day, and we win. Let's say we win 5,000. Yeah, we can still do it with £5,000, even though we're dealing with pennies here. It's still the same. Still do the same thing. or no, let's just say I win a fiver. We'll call it 500p. So I need to share out my winnings, but I can't just go, all right, you have £2.50 and I'll have £2.50, because that's not fair, because I keep on putting in more money. So let's put H here for Harvey, and let's put O here for other person. So it's not fair that we just split our winnings down the middle. We need to share out 500p across this ratio. Now, because it's 61 to 39, I don't want to have to draw out 61 boxes, because it's going to take me forever. So let's try and, we'll see if you can have a go at it. See if you could share out these winnings in this ratio. And then I'll just go through what the method is now. So let's link it into what we did before. We drew out boxes and then we added them up. So if we drew out all these boxes and added them up, then that would be 61 and 39, which is 100. So it's like I'm saying, share it out between 100 boxes. And the amount I want to share is 500p. So I'm going to share out 500p across 100 boxes. So that would mean that each box is worth 5. Now, if I did have my boxes drawn out, I would have 61 boxes worth 5. So if I had 61 boxes worth 5, that means I've got 61 lots of 5. And I'm going to need my calculator. Actually, I should be able to do that. And then the other person would have 39 boxes times 5. So I'll just go over those few steps again. We added up the ratios, or the amounts in the ratios, because that's how many boxes we would be sharing it between. And we did the total that we're sharing divided by the sum of the ratio, so that's 100. We then times it by what each person's share in the lottery ticket is. So mine's 61 times 5, the other person is 39 times 5. So 6 times 5 is 30, 60 times 5 is 300. So I would get 305 pennies, or £3.5, and the other person would get 195 pennies. 40 times 5 is 200. So take one off that, and that goes from 195, and then I can see that they add to 500p as well. So add the ratios, divide it by, or do what you're sharing, divide by the sum of those ratios, then times it by what each person's share is. That's the way to do it without drawing boxes. But I think most of the time ratios are they simplify down to fairly small numbers, so you should be able to draw a box for most of them. Right, as I said, I'll set a maths watch on this at some point in the future. So any questions on this, then just feel free to ask me.